UK Hospitality is the national trade body for all hospitality businesses. We go from a single site independent pub, bar, restaurant, hotel, coffee shop, cafe, right the way through to the national chains. So we have 700 member companies. Between them, they operate 100,000 outlets across the UK. And that gives us that breadth and depth when we go and talk to government, because that's about 95% of the market is within membership of the trade body. We also have supplier associates who are in membership with us, and they provide professional services, advice, guidance and compliance. So while my primary role is to be the voice and face of the industry to government and the media, and work on promoting the reputation of the sector as a great place to grow, work and invest, and to be as relentlessly positive and upbeat as I can. Alongside that, we do provide advice, guidance, support for businesses to be able to help them grow, thrive and survive. So there's a lot of material on our website if anybody wants to know about sustainability, workforce strategies, tips and tricks on carbon net zero. There's masses of information on there, and I have a brilliant team behind the scenes who do all of that work. But then just in terms of where we are at the moment and what we do, obviously what we aim to do is then to be able to talk to the range of stakeholders you need to interact with at a national, local and sort of media public positioning, to try and make sure that we've got the best, most benign environment within which to do business. So that's pushing back against the unnecessary costs of doing business. It's also about trying to take the positive steps forward to try and get the most supportive fiscal and regulatory regime. And as I say, primary focus at the moment, which I think is really important, is to try and talk up the industry, because a lot of our problems come from the fact that we are seen, perception-wise, having gone through COVID, as perhaps an industry that might be dying on its feet, that might be struggling to survive. And yes, it is hugely challenging out there, but politicians don't save dying industries, they tend to ignore them. People don't tend to come and work in industries that are not seen as vibrant and dynamic. So I see a large part of my role as going out there and talking up the sector as being a hotbed of entrepreneurship, dynamism, innovation, a fantastic place, as I say, to grow and invest as a person, as an individual if you're coming to work, but also for the small businesses in the sector who grow on to be the bigger companies. And at a time when you tend to get obsessed, or you get politicians that are obsessed with shiny tech unicorns and finance and those kind of companies, we need to remind them that we are the bedrock of the economy, the everyday economy, which touches people's lives, but also is crucially important from an economic perspective, socially and culturally as well. So I spend a lot of time going and talking to the politicians, reminding them that we generate £130 billion worth of revenue. That's bigger than aerospace, automotive and pharmaceuticals put together. We employ 3.2 million people, which is twice the size of financial services in the city down the road. And we're in every constituency, every part of every country. There's also 1.5 million people work in our supply chain, and it's a supply chain that is also small businesses. So in that everyday economy, that's the bit of the economy that is going to be growing. And we're also in the heart of London. It's our third largest export earner. Foreign visitors spend more eating and drinking out in our restaurants, pubs, bars and hotels than all of our food and drink exports put together. So we earn more for the exchequer in terms of exports than all of our manufacturing exports in food and drinks. So it's really important, and the sort of common stats to sort of ram all of those home. Crucially, when it comes to talking to the government at the moment, we're also one of the few parts of the economy that is forecast to grow. So pre-pandemic, we were forecast to grow 5% year on year for the next decade. Now it's been downgraded. It's probably around 2.5, 3%, but that's still, compared to the rest of the economy, a solid level of growth that we need to be able to maintain. So it's really important that we start to talk up those kind of positive opportunities. And my message to the government is, if you give us that injection and that headroom, if you give us some tailwinds to battle through the considerable headwinds that we're facing into at the moment, then we'll reward you with very quick turnaround in regeneration, in investing in young people, in growing the economy. So just a couple of points to sort of finish on as to where we're working on. As I say, looking at the positives, there are 3 reasons I think we can be cheerful in the industry and try to be optimistic and forward-looking. The first is that having had 3 years where we've had a big shadow that global travel and transport might be closed down, that has gone. With China abandoning COVID zero policies, with New Zealand and Canada changing their policies on vaccine mandates, the idea and the threat that you might close down cities like London again, either through legislation or through just the customer perception that you don't come out when you've got a big pandemic going on, has gone away, and our numbers are coming back. So second reason to be positive, particularly in Soho, we reached 76% of 2019 levels of footfall and revenue from our inbound international visitors. In London, generally for the hospitality sector, we reached 96% across the UK. We were down at about 85% in the centre of London because it takes longer for business communities to come back. But we are forecast to get above 2019 levels of revenue for the first time by the middle of this year. And the third reason to be positive, I will come back onto the cost headwinds because that revenue, that top line, is only part of the equation. The third reason to be positive before I do go into the negatives is that I wouldn't say you've got green shoots, but you have got very warm soil at the moment. You've got the first signs that we might be beyond the worst of the economic meltdown that we had in October. So coming out with the Bank of England's statement last week saying that perhaps interest rates have now peaked, not looking at putting up interest rates further. Also showing that inflation will start to come down generally for the customer, and talking up the sort of economic prospects that we're not going to have as long and as deep a recession. All those are really important for that magic elixir on which we all depend, which is consumer confidence. And I think as soon as the government feels that they have got things stabilised and can start talking up the economy, you will find customers who want to come back out to eating and drinking out in hospitality more generally than just the international tourists who are very happy to come and spend a lot of money in London, and more power to their elbow. So I think we've got signs that we are potentially coming through the worst of it, and therefore it is important to talk to the politicians about the opportunities that we've got if we get that shot of headroom. Now, that's not to downplay the challenges. There are huge challenges, as you all know very well, and I think you probably have to be doing about 125% of 2019 revenues just to stand still in the current cost headwinds. So most of the time that I'm talking to operators and then translating what operators say to government, and that's largely what my job is, taking your conversations about EBITDA, profit and loss, and translating it to politicians who don't understand P&Ls and don't understand profit, and that is literal that they don't understand it. You would have to do 120% of 2019 just to stand still in the current cost headwinds. So we're focusing on talking to them about those headwinds that we've got, that are costs. There is also the huge constraint that we've got on our economy, that is the labour shortages that we've got, not just within hospitality, but across the whole of the economy. We have more vacancies in the economy as a whole than we have people who are on unemployment benefit and actively looking for work. Yes, there are 5 million people who are in out of work benefits who are not looking for work or are economically inactive, but you have more vacancies than you have people available to fill them. And we've done several surveys of members. About half of our members are now saying that they're having to cut hours, cut days of the week that they're open, curb occupancy, curb capacity, turn away events and bookings because they don't have staff to meet demand. And that translates through to about £25 billion worth of lost sales and £7 billion of lost tax to the Exchequer. And I would submit that we can't afford as an economy to turn that kind of business away. So we've got those two big headwinds, and that's what I explained to government, and then there's the solutions that we take forward with them, which in the short term, we know they have no cash. We know they have nothing to be able to spend, so we're not going to get big bailouts as we've had during COVID, during Omicron, as we went further forward. But we talked to them about sort of 3 key areas. One is challenging the cyclical challenges that we've got at the moment. The best way to get inflation under control, which is the Prime Minister's top priority, halving inflation. The best way to do that is to give us a shot of oxygen in April, when we know that we've got the business rates will change, and particularly problematic in central London where business rates and rents are the highest in the country. But we also are seeing that downturn and turning off of that business support on energy. So can they give us something in April to help us over that hump? Because as the national living wage increases, as energy support tapers off, as you've got those inflation peaks and you're still running at about 24% food price inflation coming through, we are going to have to put our prices up. The average that we're seeing across membership is about 10% to take account of that. That's not covering costs, that's just what they feel that they can pass on. And so you're going to have a further spike in the inflation market that you've got there. So we talked to government about helping to have something that would help us to have a bit of headroom, a bit of additional cash in the tills to be able to get over that hump, and in particular talking about levels of debt. So we are talking to them about CBILS loans, we are talking to them about time to pay, we're talking about forgiveness. There's then the structural issues. If they want to level up, if they want to regenerate, and we know that our town centres and high streets need it, and if you look around, Soho is a little bit more protected, but you only have to walk around London and see the empty sites that are still there. In the decade post the financial crash, that was mainly hospitality that filled them. We haven't got the headroom to invest and grow, and 85% of outlets across the UK are just going to stagnate and not invest and not grow over the next 2 years. So again, structural reform of business rates to unlock our ability to invest in the premises and to grow our businesses and invest in our businesses. And then thirdly, the strategic issue, the tough choice they've got to make, as I mentioned, about labour shortages. We do need to have a labour market strategy. We do need to look again at some pragmatic changes around immigration, particularly in central London where the vacancy rates are higher than the rest of the country, if we're not going to hold ourselves back and if we want to invest in people. So we're talking about targeted reform of the apprenticeship levy, looking at some of those skills boot camps that worked so well for Kickstarter, and there is a scheme that's working in Westminster too to try and make sure we can have the investment in our people. And at UK Hospitality level, we're working on universal skills passports and entry-level qualifications so we can make sure we look after all of our teams, upskill people, and we have curriculums that are fit for purpose. But ultimately, as I say, there's going to have to come back to immigration. Now, there's those three big areas that I've just talked about. There are three big lines that the government is saying no to, three red lines. No, they've got no money. No, they don't want to do any changes. And no immigration reform until you've got small boats under control. So those are tough asks, but we will keep plugging away. And in the meantime, we'll also work on things like planning, licensing, taking away some of the red tape and regulation that holds business back. And that's where we first came into contact with Soho Business Alliance before it was formed, looking at pavement licences and outdoor licensing. And I think the power of that community, that collective, that collaborative voice where you can look together at what is good for an area, good for the people, good for the community, gives people that mental health and wellbeing space to be able to socialise safely. That's where we are most effective in lobbying and coming together and working collectively. So we want to work closely with Soho Business Alliance so that you can thrive, because if you thrive, then London thrives. If London thrives, the rest of the country thrives too. A sort of reverse levelling up message, if you like. But thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
There's a rumor confirmed by somebody at the council, well not confirmed, but said by somebody at the council today, Westminster at least, that we're looking from going from a 50% business rates relief to a 75% business rates relief, but it's not official.
It is official. We won that for you in October last year. So that was our campaign. That was successful. From April, you are 75% rate relief, up to a maximum cap of 110,000. So sorry for anybody who's got multi-sites, but you will all get 110,000, and if your rateable value is below that level, then and that's the £110,000 of relief, not 110,000 rateable value. So yeah, you've got 75% rate relief. It'll be automatic from April. You've got it for another year. And that's on top of rateable values that might have changed. So you should all have your rateable values. Some of them have gone down. About 2/3 of the hospitality sector has gone down, and that's on top of that. So if you're...
It sounds like this is common knowledge, but we've been talking about it in whispers because anybody who's talked to us about it said it hasn't been made official yet, and it was... I mean, is
it's
it
definitely
published?
official.
Is it published somewhere?
Yeah, the Chancellor stood up and said it in the House of Commons at the autumn statement on the 17th of November.
That doesn't mean
Which Chancellor? It's a good question. The fourth one of this year. I mean, so far I've had 5 financial statements, 4 Chancellors, 3 Prime Ministers, 2 monarchs and 1 hospitality organisation.
So the new government?
Yes, new government. Rishi is hugely supportive of hospitality because of the number of people we employ, and that is our biggest card when we're talking to the government, is that sort of we employ 3.2 million people. We give people who are younger, often more disadvantaged, not having qualifications. We give them their first taste of work, we give them common transferable skills, we provide a stepping stone back into careers and employment. So he is very supportive. So is Jeremy Hunt, and actually has been recognising the importance of tourism and the value of that. Can't tell you about the changes in ministers we've had today. We're on to our 12th culture, media and sport in a Secretary of State in 13 years. I didn't meet the last two, they never got round to meeting me, but one was Nadine Dorris, so perhaps.
Probably better.
And Kemi Badenoch's our new business secretary, and again, she's very pro-enterprise, pro-business, pro-cutting taxes, so, you know, I think we can look forward to having positive engagement. They are not going to move on immigration. It's going to be a long, hard slog, and the more we do that publicly, the more they will retrench. So we just have to work with them on that one.
What's that? Sorry, I should know this. What's the latest position on VAT for international visitors? Because surely, if they're bringing all this money in as a foreign export, we want more of them.
You
so
do,
there was sort of
yes.
Doing and throwing. Is it settled or not?
It's settled in the wrong way.
Okay, so why don't you lobby for that as well?
Yes,
Okay.
but there's a hierarchy of things that we would lobby for,
Yeah.
and there is a recognition at the moment that while you've got the intense pressure on public services, you know, the conversations I have with the Chancellor and with the PM are, what would you rather I do, Kate? Give you VAT on foreign visitors or pay the nurses? You know, politically, that's what they are looking at. There's those really, really tough choices. Personally, I'd rather give a lower VAT rate to our UK customers than our international visitors in the first instance, and then talk about it. So it's incremental. We will keep building on it. It's a very central London issue, but it is important. So we are working in a broad coalition with AIR, it's called, and New West End Company to try and
It's like
push
one
that
of
one
those
forward.
secret ways you could grow the economy, because they're not going to pay the nurses anyway. So why don't you grow the economy and then there's more money to pay nurses?
It's political optics at the moment. I mean, you have to remember that for everything for the next 12 to 18 months, general election probably October 2024, possibly May 24, but we're in a general election campaign now. And think about the political optics of the 45p tax rate. That is what they are up against in terms of where is your priority for cutting taxes and what looks the right way round.
Okay.
So Rishi was the one who took it away. I cannot see him reversing it.
Okay, asking for a friend. Yeah.
But we continue to campaign. It's undoubtedly the case that we will have foreign visitors. I don't think they will not come. I think they will come for less time to London when they're doing a foreign trip, because they do multi-sites, and they'll spend less while they're here. But
Okay, well, it's big boats, I guess, from London.
Hi, Kate. I'm Miranda, by the way. You might have spoken about it in the beginning, but I was a little bit late. But a big issue, obviously, is still staffing.
yes,
And obviously the stop of immigration and Brexit and all that shenanigan. Is there anything will be done with the Home Office or in the pipeline to be done? I just sponsored 3 staff members. It's about 20 grand.
yeah.
It's a massive
Yeah.
headache at the moment.
I mean,
to get staff in general.
again, it's they are not receptive to discussing immigration. I think in the first
they were talking
instance.
about the Australian model.
Yeah, well, you've got the Australian points-based system, which is
Yeah.
what you're working through. So in the short term, we're pushing for that, the cost to be reduced, the bureaucracy to be reduced, to be more pragmatic and sensible. We're also pushing for a youth mobility scheme with the EU 27. So that we have it with the Commonwealth at the moment.
Yeah.
Under 30s can come and work for 2 years. We're pushing for that to be extended to Europe, and that is the area that the Home Office is looking at the most.
Yeah.
The new trade deals that are coming through all have 3-year visas. So Australia, New Zealand, Canada, India, when it's agreed, they all have 3-year working visas, working holiday visas for young people under 30s coming through. So those are the areas the government will look at, because that's sort of soft immigration. It's not the one that's controversial.
Yeah.
I think unlikely that they will look at anything more flexible. That idea that Liz Truss had of a growth visa, a one-year barista visa, a low-skill visa, I don't think that's going to be taken forward in the short term. They do know that it's a conundrum, and they do know that it's hurting the economy. They want to work on reducing economic inactivity and promoting recruitment of the domestic workforce and tackling small boats, and then they'll come on to look at immigration. But they need some air cover on those other bits first.
And sorry, Kate, just to follow up on that. So apart from, we know we can't change it.
Yes.
But I do think it'd be useful to have a bit more education for the hospitality owners.
Yes.
How to go through the skilled worker
Yeah.
because they don't.
Yeah,
Up until
definitely.
Brexit, they didn't really think about it,
Yes.
and now suddenly I'm getting. I personally have gone through it 3 or 4 times, and we're getting so many people that want to work, but we don't really know how.
Well,
how
we
to
can
do it,
pull
you know.
together a webinar and tips and guidance to
Yeah,
help with
awesome.
that, if that would be really
I-
helpful. Because
I fully,
you know,
I fully respect you can't get them to change, but we'd
no,
love
but
to
we
just
can.
figure out how we can
Yeah,
get
if we
through the
if we
system.
can work with you to try and help you understand the system, because it is quite complicated. About 95% of it you can do without an immigration lawyer,
Yeah.
but that last 5% of just making sure you've got the right SIC codes, you've done all the processing. Yeah, we can look at doing that with you and working to build some tools and templates and help.
Exactly, 'cause it's a whole new thing that we haven't really thought about
Yeah.
before, and it's certainly in central London. It's just so. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
and I know I get lots of people say to me, you know, the commis chef is not listed, sommelier is not listed, chef de partie or a pastry chef. You don't have to have those specific job titles. Just sometimes we're putting down the wrong titles, and you just need to have sort of a manager or a chef. And then you're okay and you can get through. The other thing we're pushing on is that in addition to the visa costs, there's something called the immigration skills charge, which charges you £1,500, £1,000 if you're a small business, per worker per year, just as a disincentive for employing foreign workers. So we are pushing to see if that can be taken away, because that adds £5,000 straight away, and you've got to pay it up front for 5 years. So we are pushing on that.
The NHS costs as well.
Yeah.
That is just £3,500.
Just done
for
one,
each one.
just 20 grand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Just one.
pay for
yeah,
it.
yeah.
If you want to tell everybody, it's 200 grand.
Yeah.
£7,000
So
per
the cost of it and the red tape and the bureaucracy is just too difficult. So, as I say, some short-term wins could be around how do we help you get through it? How can we reduce the cost and the bureaucracy, and then see if we can get more workable solutions?
Kate, a huge thank you. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.